Bridge lights at dusk, confessions by morning traffic. My name is Daniel and my job is to keep a river crossed without complaint. I'm the overnight supervisor for the city's movable bridges. Control towers, span motors, horn blasts that sound like verdicts. On paper I log vessel requests, monitor traffic cams, dispatch crews when a circuit sulks. In practice I translate appetite. Barges want passage without waiting. Commuters want permanence without delay. The city wants miracles that don't invoice overtime. I carry a key that wakes gears, a thermos that has outlived 2 contracts, and a ledger where night writes down everything daylight swears it doesn't remember. I live with Victor. He paints houses, but he treats walls like canvases, rolls of muted greens and careful whites, ladders that sigh when he climbs. He comes home speckled and humming, lays his brush in the sink like a confession, and kisses me with lips that smell faintly of primer. We have a rule on an index card taped under a magnet shaped like a suspension bridge. Say it by morning traffic. Our busiest rush is 07:30. We picked that time after a winter when midnight honesty became theater and noon became rehearsal. Morning is graceless. We like that about it. The Tuesday the span lights behaved and I didn't, the river felt restless, a mirror with too many arguments. At 01:22 a tug hailed for a lift. At 02:49 a freighter threatened tardiness like it was a weapon. At 03:36 a fishing boat slipped through with its lights whispering. At 04:18 my phone vibrated with the joint email Victor, and I use for deliveries and unwanted truths. Thank you for your stay, the mariner. Time 12:083:02. Points 200 added. Morning traffic stood up in my chest like a sergeant and cleared its throat. I didn't call him. Our second rule is for the things you can still walk off. 2 loops across the catwalk before nomming it. The bridge hummed under my boots, steel complaining like old knees. The river below muttered its single line, "You already know." He arrived during the freighter's lift, a silhouette in a coat too clean for the tower. "Vale," he said, last name first, the way some men do when they think reputation is more useful than breath. "Cashin," he added, offering a hand like an invitation. His badge called him a logistics consultant, hired by the port to smooth coordination. He had a smile rehearsed for donors and eyes rehearsed for doors. "You keep the city moving," he said. "I keep it from apologizing to itself," I answered, watching the freighter clear like a thought that barely fits. He leaned on the console as if he'd been permitted. "When you open the span, do you feel it anywhere?" "In my teeth," I said, "and sometimes in the part of the chest where stories pretend they're facts." He laughed, soft and knowing. "Drink after shift?" he asked. "The Mariner Bar has learned how to forgive men who keep rivers awake." Victor texted at 05:12. A photo of a wall half-primed, captioned "Client wants eggshell with more honesty." "Be home by 7, morning traffic." I typed a heart and the little bridge emoji we share. I meant both. The Mariner Bar is designed to absolve. Lamps teach cheekbones, carpeting forgives receipts. Cashin sat in the corner where shadows practiced loyalty. He asked what it feels like to let strangers wait on your yes. I told him it feels like standing with your hand on a lever that doesn't care about metaphors. He touched the back of my hand with 2 fingers like a mariner testing a mooring. He didn't say here. I didn't say now. The elevator said it for us. His sweet smelled like citrus and negotiated truce. He kissed like a man who had been thanked for restraint and wanted to audition for hunger. He pressed me against the window, and the bridge below lifted its red lights like a toast. He was generous where good biographies are generous and selfish, where mouths remember being animals. I put my hands where agreements live. We left the lamp on because daylight had been slipped into the terms at the bar. After he lay on his stomach and traced the sheet seemed like a plan. "You'll forgive him," he said, meaning Victor, meaning the person who teaches walls to breathe. "I'll speak by morning traffic," I said. He smiled like he'd invented the clause. Victor was home when I walked in, shirt spattered, hair smelling faintly of turpentine. He poured coffee with a hand that didn't tremble. At 0728 we stood under the bridge magnet and I said nouns. Hotel, elevator, mouth, hands, yes. I didn't try adjectives. He listened like a man who has learned that primer hides and reveals in the same stroke. "Do you love him?" he asked steady. "I loved the hour where nobody needed me to decide," I said. He nodded once, took the marker and wrote under our rule, "No rooms we can't name at this table. If anything breaks, we break it together before nightfall." He underlined together twice, capped the marker, and kissed me with lips that tasted like coffee and primer. Cashin didn't vanish. He returned to the tower with a consultant's humility and a thief's timing. He sent me a photo of the span at dawn with the caption "Proof," as if light required notarization. He knew two tug captains by name and said them like keys. He stood in the tower during a routine lift and asked if bridges ever lie. "Only when men write the reports," I said. The city's gossip vertical posted a grainy mariner elevator still, my shoulder, his mouth, a caption that tried to pun with openings. Victor didn't forward it. He printed it, taped it inside the cabinet where we keep sugar, and at morning traffic replaced it with a grocery list. This is how he archives, nothing heavy at reach. Props are predictable. The mariner called to say housekeeping had found a ring under a chair in the room tied to my loyalty number. Narrow gold, engraved C+D, arithmetic pretending to be law. Not mine. The clerk asked if I wanted to claim it. "Hold for owner," I said with my tower voice, the one that keeps span motors polite. Work tried to save me with physics. A draw span hesitated, sulking like a child. A cable frayed where nobody wanted to see. A barge captain cursed in 5 languages and I logged 3. Cashin texted, "You're very good when the river is afraid." I typed, "I prefer accurate," and didn't send it. Then security called at 0410, voice tight. "Check the overlook bench tower side." I walked down, flashlight in hand, and found a recorder taped beneath the plank, cheap and patient. Its red light blinked like an uninvited heartbeat. It had been collecting what people say while waiting for a lift. Sighs that sounded like vows, whispered names, curses softened by fog. The sticker on its battery belonged to a guest engagement firm the port had hired to inform service design. Cashin had bragged about knowing their founder. I peeled it off with a scraper, gloved because rumor stains. Legal wrote a memo with "regrettable" 4 times and "consent" twice. We posted signs in 3 languages, recording without consent prohibited. Visitors smiled like rules are suggestions. Crews muttered about microphones in their sleep. I told Victor at morning traffic. He sipped coffee, set the cup down, and asked, "Are we being interesting, Daniel, or are we being us?" He asks it like a craftsman asks about grain direction. "Us," I said. He touched my throat gently, checking for pulse or confession. We left the lamp on. Cashin tried a finale men like him mistake for inevitability. He waited by the tower door, held the ring between 2 fingers so the engraving flashed like proof. "Say my name," he murmured. "Cashin," I said, because facts deserve pronunciation. Then I added exit, because bridges are built for endings as much as crossings. "If you came for erotics notarized." There was a wall, a yes, hands where we said hands would be, a mouth that believed in the moment more than the man. The lamp stayed on because daylight had been invited. It was heat without metaphor and the brief reprieve of a head that stopped counting spans. If you came for intrigue garnished, a ring with arithmetic, a recorder taped under a bench, an elevator camera that thinks it writes theater, a consultant who bills in stories. If you came for redemption, bridges don't sell it. We sell passage. The recorder became policy. The firm was dismissed by a paragraph about values that fooled nobody. Security swept benches every hour. Signs glared. Tourists ignored them. The river pretended it had nothing to do with us. The ring's other initial belonged to a man named Carter. There is always a Carter, who arrived with a lawyer whose kindness had been rehearsed. He retrieved the band with relief and nodded at me like gratitude should be silent. I nodded back with the face operators where when machinery finally listens. Victor and I practiced boring until it became its own craft. He put his hand at my throat in the kitchen one morning, soft pressure, a question. "Here," he asked. "Now," I said, because consent likes timetables. We ate eggs that overcooked slightly and didn't apologize. The lamp stayed on. Work stayed work. A pedestrian asked if bridges remember the names of ships. I said no, they only remember requests. A tug captain brought donuts, sugar dusting his logbook. A seagull tried to make a ladder its parliament. I logged it all in my ledger, nouns without adjectives. Sometimes at 03:00 I stand on the catwalk, watch the river stretch, and remember my father teaching me to tie a clove hitch. "This knot," he said, "is a promise that understands itself." I think of the index card on our fridge and the brass magnet holding it. I think of a ring engraved with arithmetic and how math pretends to be moral. I think of Victor's hand steadying a brush, steadying me. We added a line to our card because rules like company. In Victor's patient print, if you burn something, do it where I can help find water. We didn't laminate it. Paper breathes better without plastic. The magnet holds. Cashin will find another port to haunt, another tower to rehearse sincerity in, another ring to engrave with arithmetic. I will still carry a badge, a ledger, and the habit of being precise only when accuracy has already been respected. For a few hours at a time, I keep a city moving by deciding who waits. For a few hours at a time, I keep my mouth for promises I intend to keep. Then I go home if the river allows, stand under a little brass bridge with a man who knows how to paint permanence and say the thing. We leave the lamp on or off as needed. And when fog presses against the red lights and waits for me to lift the span, I breathe, put my hand on the lever, and tell steel, gently, when to rise.